On this episode, we speak about dealing with frustration. We all experience this state of being found somewhere between anger and sadness. We're not quite mad, but we really aren't too happy either. In those moments, we can't pinpoint what it might be, and it's usually frustration. Tune in as we discover what frustration is, how it manifests itself in our lives, and ways to combat it. This episode was even therapeutic for me. Let's dig in right here on LifeClub.
I'm Tashima Jones. Welcome to LifeClub. I genuinely believe personal development unlocks the door to the abundant and wonderful life we all already have. I also believe we must be intentional about seeking out that life in order to find and fulfill it. I am so grateful your journey of discovery has led you all the way here. Let's keep moving forward together. Once again, welcome to Life Club with me, Tashima Jones. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to Life Club with me, Tashima Jones. Super excited to have you joining me. Today, we are speaking about how to deal with frustration. Yes. So recently I had a whole attitude. It wasn't anger or even sadness. I was really in my feelings and didn't quite know what it was until I took a look within. After a bit of prayer, aka meditation, I realized frustration was the root of my discomfort. And of course, I had to share with you right here on Life Club, where we grow, gain enlightenment, and move forward together. So today we are speaking about this thing called frustration and how to really handle it. Now, we always start with that definition of a thing because it's super important for us to recognize what it is that we're dealing with. When we can define something, when we can put a name to a thing, we're better able to move through it. So, frustration is defined as the feeling of being upset or annoyed, especially because of an inability to change or achieve something. The best way that I actually am able to paint this picture of what frustration is almost like being tied in knots. It's like a rope being just in a whole bunch of knots. You know, those of us who still have wired headphones, how that frustration of your wire getting all tangled up and you have to sit there and untangle it if you're trying to untie your shoelace or whatever the case may be, trying to get something out of this knot. At least that's how I felt in this space of frustration. Another picture of frustration can also be feeling stuck. Like you're trying to get through a door that's not opening or trying to climb a mountain that seems to be endless. Just those points of life, really, where you feel like you cannot move forward, that something is preventing you from moving forward. And then this other idea of feeling empty or feeling void of a thing. And when I realized that, I decided to dig a little deeper. I was led to dig a little deeper as to why I felt this way. What was it in my life that caused me to feel as if I'm stuck or having this feeling of being void or just plainly just being annoyed? You know, oftentimes we have these seasons or these days in our lives where it's like you feel bothered and you just don't know what it is. And you owe yourself the grace to actually find out what that is so that you can move through it, and not only move through it, but collect the gems and jewels along the way. The reason why that frustration showed up at all. Now, when we dig a little deeper into this idea of frustration, we come across the root of this word, which is to frustrate. So what does that mean? I'm glad you asked. Frustrate is to prevent a planned or attempted action from progressing, succeeding, or being fulfilled. Again, to frustrate is to prevent a planned or attempted action from progressing, succeeding, or being fulfilled. Let's just take a deep breath on that. We have so many plans and so many goals, as mentioned during our 1 minute of meditation, and contentment seems to just be this thing that's constantly fleeting, that's running away from us, that every time we take one step, it seems as if we have to take 10 more to get to this space of contentment, of fullness, of abundance. So when we realize that, okay, whatever it is that's frustrating me, if I feel annoyed or I feel upset or I feel like I'm trying to achieve this dream, this goal, this state of being, and for some reason or another, there is something preventing me from getting to that space, we then have to find out, well, what are your goals? What are your dreams? Where are you trying to get to? Oftentimes we get frustrated, not because we're not putting in the work, but we don't really even know the destination. And I think when you recognize the destination, you are able to see the breadcrumbs, like I always I like to say, along the journey, that even if you're not there yet, you know that you're on the right path. So first and foremost, we have to understand, well, what are we seeking? Where do we want to go? What is it that we truly, truly desire to have and to obtain? What is it that we're reaching for? What is it that we're seeking? You know, as I age, I recognize that goals never stop. The hustle, the grind, as many people would say, it never really ends. It never really ends. And what we are missing out on and what we are not recognizing is that life is that dash. Life is that journey from where you are to where you would like to be. Because as soon as you climb that mountain, there's going to be another mountain to climb. And a lot of times our frustration is in this feeling of never arriving. But perhaps the place we're trying to arrive at is the issue in itself. You have to be aware of that. You have to be aware that life is truly the journey and not necessarily getting from one place to another. And yes, I truly believe that there is this foundation. I truly believe that there is this ground level requirement for life in itself. And I truly believe that that is worth the toil that you put in, really just arriving not necessarily at a material space in your life or this space of having overflow. I think we miss this idea of first having the cup being full in itself before it overflows, and we're chasing overflow, and we're not recognizing that our cup is not even full yet. And I truly believe that that's the foundation that has to be laid. There is this level of being, of existing, to where it's like, okay, I am settled, I'm at rest. And again, I truly believe that that's in this idea of contentment, contents, to be full. Stop worrying about abundance and let's just focus on being full in itself, full of who you're supposed to be, full of the vision for your life, and full of this state of rest, this state of faith, and this state of trust. So that's one of the areas that we have to deal with. And I think for me, I've leveled up. Like, frustration for me is like, that's a big deal, because before it would be sadness, before it would be anger, before it would be these low frequency vibes that I would be experiencing. But to get to this space of frustration itself is like really great. It's levels to this. And it feels good to say, you know what? No, I'm not angry. No, I'm not sad. No, I don't feel this idea of lack. But what is it? So when you get to this level of frustration, that's a good thing. That is a good thing, because now it becomes this issue of, okay, I have a solid ground, but now it's becoming more about the plans that I truly believe are for me and the vision for my life. So it's becoming that thing versus feeling like not enough, versus feeling the insecurities that I've faced in the past. Again, we are speaking about frustration, and to be in a frustrated state is to feel upset, annoyed, and just unable to change or to achieve a thing. And this idea of frustration comes from this practice of frustrate, which is to prevent a plan or an action from progressing, succeeding, or being fulfilled. Now, I'm just going to get real transparent as always. My frustration came from this idea of putting in years and years of faith, years and years of trust, years and years of energy into a thing that I still haven't seen the fulfillment of that thing yet. Yes, you get a breadcrumb here or there. Yes, you get, 10 points and an A on this exam, but it still doesn't feel as if it has fully arrived. It's kind of starting that I guess last trimester of your pregnancy. It's like, I just want this baby to be here already. Like, when is the baby coming? And yes, frustration is a healthy thing because number one, I truly believe that it reveals where your faith is. It reveals what you truly believe in your heart. Because if a thing doesn't frustrate you, a thing that you have been putting energy into, a thing that you have believed for such a long time, if the arrival of that thing doesn't frustrate you, you may not really believe in it. Because to believe in a thing is to know that it is real and to be in expectation of it. So to be frustrated that it isn't here, it really does reveal, okay, like I actually believe in this thing, because I wouldn't be bothered by not seeing it. I wouldn't be upset or a little down and out about it. So again, that's a clue. That shows you that, okay, I do believe in this vision or call in my life. I do believe in this dream. I do believe that this relationship is supposed to be healthy. I do believe that I am a millionaire. I do believe these awesome things and these plans and these hopes and dreams that I have invested in for such a long time. But on the flip side of that, we have to understand there are so many reasons as to why we are frustrated. And that's our part. So once I recognized that the thing that I was dealing with was this idea of frustration, and then I recognized what this idea of frustrate means, I then was able to see, okay, so what do I feel? What is my perception of the things that are preventing me from progressing, succeeding, or being fulfilled? And oftentimes, we look outside of ourselves for those clues, but remember, the inner reality creates the outer form. Those things that are physical manifest from the spiritual. So when we go to pointing fingers and when we go to playing the blame game and when we go into the things that are preventing us from moving forward, you have to look on the inside first. And again, that is not to condemn. That is not to say that you did something wrong, but it is to shift your perspective, and it is to figure out what it is that I am giving my attention to and giving my energy to that's adding to this frustration that I'm experiencing. I remember someone saying that all of your problems are basically you. And that's a really great space to be in, because again, you can only control yourself. The only control that we do have is self-control. And when we get into that space of understanding that, we tap in to the inner being, we tap into the core of who we are. So your frustration is something that's going on the inside of you. Again, I repeat, the frustration you are experiencing is within you. And that's a beautiful thing, because then you hold the key to that freedom from that frustration. You hold the key to unlocking that frustration. So I wanted to go over some reasons why we get frustrated. First and foremost, it is control. I alluded to that by saying self-control is the only form of control that we have. And a lot of us, including me, have this issue with control. And I didn't really recognize how much of a problem I had with control until recently. And oftentimes our need or desire to control doesn't necessarily come out in a negative way. It doesn't always reveal itself by manipulation or you trying to tell other people what to do. Oftentimes, your need for control can manifest itself in you feeling like you have to be the answer to everybody's problem. And you feeling like you have to rescue everybody out of the situation that they're in. You may blame yourself for not being enough for somebody else. You might feel like, oh my goodness, I have to do something about this thing that this other person is going through, or I have to volunteer for everything that needs somebody to stand in position of, or I feel like I have to control my children and I'm responsible for them doing well in school, or I'm responsible for them succeeding in their life. This idea for control can manifest itself in so many other ways that aren't necessarily negative or aren't necessarily bad. It could simply be you feeling like you have to show up for everything and you have to volunteer for everything and you have to help everybody at every point in their lives. And that's really you, honestly, stepping in this space of the life force, honestly. You feeling like you have to remedy everybody's problem, even your own. Take a deep breath on that. Even your own. This idea of control is really stemmed from feeling responsible for things happening and for fixing things that do happen. And once you are faced with an obstacle, frustration can arrive when you feel like you can't do a thing and when you feel like you can't provide, or when you feel like you have to stand back on this one, or when you feel like none of your efforts are helping the situation. None of your helpful efforts are helping the situation. So a lot of times our reasons for being frustrated is simply because it's out of our control. It's out of our hands and we can't do something about it. And that can be very frustrating to the person who genuinely has a really great heart, who genuinely wants to help. We have to recognize our personality traits and the characteristics of who we are. And we have to really understand ourselves. We have to understand why it is that we do what we do. We have to understand what frustrates us, because again, knowing what frustrates you allows you to unlock that door to not being frustrated. So the first thing and the first reason why oftentimes we are frustrated is because of this idea of wanting to control a situation. So when people don't move, when we think they need to move, when people don't call you back, when people don't deliver this for you, all of these things, when people don't show up as you see fit, and you can't make somebody do a thing, or you can't make certain situations and circumstances change in your own power, you are guaranteed to be led into this path of frustration. The next thing is this idea of the wait. OMG. I didn't realize how much of a problem I had with waiting until I text somebody and I'm mad when they don't text me back in 2 to 5.2 minutes. Waiting can be a very strenuous activity. It can really make you feel some type of way. Waiting. So one of the roots and one of the reasons why we get frustrated is just because the simple practice of waiting, being impatient with certain things that you are desiring, or certain things that you really want to happen, like yesterday. And when it doesn't happen, you feel as if you, like, everything. Oftentimes when we're waiting and it doesn't happen when we expect for it to happen, or when it doesn't happen at this point of there's a difference between expecting a thing to happen and then when you've just been waiting for so long. So, okay, I've accepted the fact that it didn't happen when I wanted it to happen. But then you get to the point where you're waiting and waiting and waiting and it still doesn't happen. And that can be very, very frustrating to just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. That can be very frustrating. And then that tends to lead us to this space of wanting to go back into control and do it things our way. And oftentimes when we try to do things our way in our own power, it doesn't necessarily work out in our favor. So again, reasons why we get frustrated is just this idea of wanting to be in control. And when we aren't in control, that can be very, very frustrating. The next thing was waiting, just practicing this art of waiting, practicing this art of sitting still, practicing this art of doing a thing over and over and over again until something breaks, until your water breaks. The third reason why we oftentimes get frustrated is because we just don't know a thing. Doubt itself. And it's so funny because we don't really know a lot. And I think because of this human ability to predict things, to be creatures of habit and to say, okay, this happened on this day when I did this, so maybe it'll happen the same way tomorrow. Well, because we have this calendar of Monday through Friday and it's just this ongoing thing, you know that Monday comes after Sunday. You know Tuesday is up next. So this idea of us knowing a thing, we know that the sun rises, and even, to the point of predicting weather and trying to, figure out everything before it happens. It's almost a burden to us as human beings because we miss out on that flow of the life force. We miss out on living our life, living a spirit-led life where we kind of just go with the flow. Birds have this internal guidance that just leads them to where they're supposed to be in the season that they're supposed to be there. Just creatures in nature in general are so connected with spirit, with the life force, that they just do what it is that they're supposed to do. And because of man's free will and power and authority in the earth, it can become this burden if we aren't submitted and if we aren't aware of how much we really do control. So this idea of not knowing a thing can be a frustration to us. It can be a frustration to us because, again, this idea of expectancy, this idea of knowing is something that we just innately have at a certain point in our lives. We understand that reality. So not knowing can truly be a source of frustration. The next thing is overworking, aka just being performance based. We think that if we do A, B, and C, we will arrive at Z. And sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes the manifestation of the thing that you are waiting for has nothing to do with what you're doing. And we can get frustrated because it's like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Okay, so I graduated from high school. I went to college. I did really well. I'm about to graduate with honors. And then when you don't get the job, it's like, okay, what's going on here? Because I'm supposed to arrive at this point if I do these things, if I carry out these steps. And unlike school, life itself doesn't always work like that. And that can be very frustrating when you feel like you have done everything that you could possibly do to arrive at this specific space in your life. Again, that can be financially, that can be in parenting, that can be in friendships and relationships, that can be, in entrepreneurship. It can be so many things, but the fact remains the same is that when we say or when we believe that if we do these things, we will arrive at this specific destination and it doesn't happen, frustration is definitely a result of that. And last but not least, our frustration can truly be rooted in not learning the lesson. Whew, let's just take a Selah on that. Your frustration can very well be that you haven't learned the lesson that you're supposed to learn. And I always say, stay in the classroom. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Just stay in the classroom. Just stay in the classroom. Stay there until you learn the lesson. And on the flip side of that, you also have to leave the classroom when you have learned the lesson. So digging a little bit deeper into learning the lesson, I wanted to focus on understanding why you are where you are and what the lesson is. And oftentimes we don't necessarily know the lesson until we're in the classroom. And then it's like, okay, so I'm in this unhealthy relationship. So now I'm being schooled on how to deal with unhealthy relationships. You can be in a financial situation and it's like, okay, now I'm learning how to be a great steward of my finances. And there's so many lessons that we are learning every single day of our lives. And it's not until you submit to learning that lesson, it's not until you decide that you want to learn the lesson, is not until you wake up to the lesson that you are learning that you can actually learn it. I always say I ran away as an adult. After I graduated from school, I was like, you know what? I'm just running away. And as adults, we call that moving to another state because the people here, I'm not really feeling them, or it's this and that. And you have to recognize that when you run away from a thing, you're still going to end up with yourself. So you will save yourself a lot of trouble, a lot of turmoil, if you just decide to learn the lesson at hand, understanding that the school of life never ends, understanding that you are always in this space of mastering a thing or learning a thing. And usually you're doing that at the same time at different levels of your life. So again, one of the roots of frustration, one of the reasons why we get frustrated is because we're simply not learning the lesson. And when we do learn the lesson, we choose to stay in that classroom. You have to be okay with graduation. You have to be okay with moving forward and moving up and moving onward. You have to be okay with that. So learn the lesson. Do not leave the classroom until the lesson is learned. And then when you finally learn it, when you finally achieve it, be okay with walking away. If you were just tuning in, this is Life Club with me, Tashima Jones. We are speaking about how to handle, how to deal with frustration. We have defined frustration as the feeling of being upset or annoyed, especially because of an inability to change or achieve something. And we also define this idea of frustrate itself, and that means to prevent a plan or attempted action from progressing, succeeding, or being fulfilled. We went over some reasons why we get frustrated. This idea, this need for control. And remember, control is not always the result of manipulation or somebody just trying to take advantage of you. Oftentimes, this idea of control manifests itself through simply feeling like you are everybody's savior, for trying to take the role, honestly, of the life force. We also went over this idea of waiting, just being impatient, basically feeling like I cannot sit here any longer. And again, that kind of takes us back to this idea of control. When we get impatient, we try to do things in our own power. And oftentimes that does not work out well. Up next, another reason for being frustrated was this idea of not knowing. And when we recognize that we do not have control, and when we recognize that we do not control the sun, the moon, and the stars, we acknowledge this fact, this truth, this reality that we really don't know a lot. I mean, and that's okay. That's the beauty. And that's the beauty in being. Yeah, yes. Acknowledge that you do not know everything. That will free you from so much frustration. The other reason we get frustrated is all overworking ourselves, overcommitting ourselves, and basically living life through this performance-based mentality. We say, if I do A, B, and C, I'm going to get to Z. And in life, that does not always happen. And that can truly be a source of frustration. And last but not least, the other reason we get frustrated is because we are not learning the lesson. You keep running across the same dude. You keep running across the same girl. You keep coming up to the same obstacle over and over and over again, going around that same mountain. You wondering why you're frustrated because you haven't learned the lesson. And I truly believe that is the power in being transparent with yourself. And it's the power of enlightenment. Again, to be transparent is to be clear enough for light to shine through. And oftentimes we have to be real with ourselves. We have to be real with the life force. We have to be real about our insecurities, about the things that we are afraid of, or just this idea of having the spirit of fear altogether. You have to be transparent with yourself. A lot of times people walk around saying they real, but they can't even look themselves in the mirror. That's a whole nother show. But the point is that you have to allow yourself to be a student of life, because life will continue to humble you until you do. Now, I wanted to just get into some tips and tools, aka our life work, on how to move forward from this state of frustration. Now, let's be real. Frustration is something that we will come up against, but I think when we start to use it for our good and not to see it as an enemy, we will be better for it. So allow frustration to reveal the things that are going on the inside of you. Allow that frustration to lead you to this idea. Okay, maybe I'm trying to take too much control over this situation, or maybe I'm just being impatient, or maybe it's because I really don't know, or maybe it's because I'm living this performance-based lifestyle, or maybe I'm not learning the lesson. When frustration reveals those things to you, you are better equipped to move forward. So one of the main things that we have to do in that state of frustration is to trust. It is to trust that everything is working out for your good. It is to trust and to have confidence in the life force to really manage your life. Oh, let's just take a deep breath on that. Trust. And I'm still really trying to crack this code of trust, but I do know that it comes from a space on the inside of you. It doesn't necessarily show up in your five senses. It really comes from that core being on the inside of you. And honestly, I want to be like the birds of the air. I want to sit in that space of just trusting and just knowing that it is well. So start to focus on the areas that you do not trust the spirit in. Focus on those areas that you have maybe been disappointed in. Focus on those areas that you have this insecurity of having enough, or whatever again, trust is having confidence in something. So if you are insecure in an area, then you do not have confidence in that area. And you need to really start to dig in to figure out what that is. And this can be as small as not knowing how to fry chicken. Why do I feel like I can't fry this chicken? Or it can be as big as feeling insecure in your marriage. It can be as insecure as speaking in front of people, or literally just going outside. There's so many things that we feel less than, so many areas that we feel less than in. And it's really so vital, so important for you to really deal with those things. Again, look at yourself in the mirror. And that can be it can start at the physical mirror, but it's really tapping into your mindset and into your heart and being real with those things. Because when you face those giants, they do fall. So trust is number one in your space of frustration, is allowing yourself to just sit still and know that it is well. And that is a journey. That is truly a journey, to just be confident in the spirit that you cannot see. Again, we have to get outside of our five sensory self and tap into that true power that's on the inside of us. Up next is understanding that you're not the life force. Again, you are not the life force. You do not possess this ability to know all things, to be everywhere, and to lead and to guide not only yourself, but other people in your life. You have to understand that you are not the life force. And that's a beautiful thing. Because if any one of us was the life force, we would really be in a lot of trouble. So it's a good thing that you aren't. And I think even more precious in understanding that, and acknowledging that is that it takes off so much pressure that we put on ourselves for wanting to be perfect or wanting to be this ideal thing that really doesn't even exist. Taking that pressure off and recognizing that I can only do what I can do not only relieves you of that stress and that burden and that yoke, but it also frees you to allow yourself to be who you are and become who you are becoming. But it also grants that grace to the people around you. And then we arrive at this space of contentment. So that was our 1 minute of meditation, is just seeking contentment and focusing on contentment. And I really have started to understand that contentment is not having more than what you need. Contentment is truly being okay with what you have and recognizing that you have what you need. We're trying to arrive at this place of above and beyond where we haven't even climbed the ladder to just enough. And I'm not even speaking about just enough in your material possessions. I'm speaking about you knowing that you are enough. I'm about to get emotional, like Carl Thomas in here. We have to get to this space of knowing that we are enough. We are enough for who we are called to be. We are enough for the life force. We are enough for the people in our lives. We are enough for the roles that we have been called to fulfill. But oftentimes it's in us not knowing that we are enough that pushes us to overwork, to overcommit, to over and outdo the next person or what we think is necessary, which takes us so much further from that reality of being enough. And I just want to sit here for a little while. This idea of enough is nothing missing and nothing broken. Just being okay with self, being okay on the inside, being okay with how you look and how you speak. And I mentioned it the other day where it's like I'm a low-key singer and rapper in my head, like I just am. But I recognize that me being content with my level and with my skill is not sounding like somebody else, but it's being okay with how I sound. I don't plan on dropping an album anytime soon, so I'm good. And when we start to be okay with who we are and be okay with where we are and stop chasing these things that we think will bring us happiness, again, that brings us to that space of frustration when we feel like we have to have the latest fill in the blank, or we have to look like this and sound like this or be like this or have this certificate, or when we start to chase those things, we go further and further away from this idea of contentment and from this idea of simply being enough. If that's the only thing that you take away from this episode, this installment of LifeClub, is that I am enough, I have done a good deed today. You are enough. And that's truly what contentment is. The contents, the thing that's on the inside, what it is that you already possess. You are enough. And when you start to see yourself as enough, you start to see your life as enough. You start to see that you have enough. And that truly becomes your joy. And that truly becomes your space of fulfillment. That truly becomes you recognizing that it is well. And last but not least, I wanted to speak about enjoying the journey, enjoying the dash. I recently heard that, again, us being in our, just our greatness, living in our greatness and not understanding our power and authority and not understanding how awesome we are constantly manipulating things and trying to speed everything up in our lives, that we miss the journey, that we miss the dash. So we go from setting a goal, time, arriving at that goal. We want to go from setting the goal to arriving at the goal. And we miss everything in between. Life is a journey, not a destination. Yes, India Ari. So when we recognize what life is truly about, when we recognize that it is truly about this journey, when we recognize it's not about going from the valley to the mountain instantly, but when we recognize it's the journey along the way, going back to our infamous baby, you do not go from just, the seed being planted to the baby arriving. Nobody wants to have a premature birth. It takes time to develop. It takes time to learn and to grow and to discover. And honestly, that is life itself. When you come into this earth, it's almost like that birthing process starts all over again in a new area. You start to discover yourself. You go on this journey of discovering relationships. You go on this journey of discovering purpose. You go on this journey of discovering how to use the gifts and the talents and the abilities that you have to just share with other people. We are constantly developing. We are constantly learning. That is life. When something stops growing, it ceases to exist. So we have to get this clarity of enjoying the journey, just enjoying your walk to and from work. Because then it's like you rush to get to work, and then when you get there, you're rushing to leave work, and when you get home, you're rushing. It's like we are constantly seeking something. We're constantly going around this mountain. We're constantly trying to figure things out instead of allowing this flow of life, allowing this energy, this just divine energy, allowing ourselves to just be spirit-led and enjoying the journey, enjoy the dash. Yes, let's just take a deep breath on that one. Let us start to find fulfillment in the everyday things that we encounter and the people we are around on a regular basis. Let's start to savor those moments, because you're going to look up and it's going to be over, basically. And then we cry and complain about what we could have done and what we should have done and how many hugs we could have given to somebody or how many things that we could have enjoyed along the way. So start to enjoy those things now. Yes, we have been speaking about frustration. When you find yourself in this space of being just plain annoyed and you feel as if something is preventing you from getting from point A to point Z, start to recognize the things that you may be encountering on the inside of you, be it this need to control or having impatience or just not knowing or feeling like I'm doing everything I could possibly do and I'm not there yet. And last but not least, when you start to recognize that, maybe I haven't learned the lesson, there you will find the tips and tools that you need to apply to carry you through this space of frustration. And those things, in my true belief, are to trust, to understand that you cannot save the world, to understand that there is this space of contentment, meaning you are simply enough. And last but not least, just enjoy the journey in whatever way that you can. Start to see the silver lining. Start to see that, when you plant a seed, it has to go into some dirt every now and then, but keep watering it and keep growing and keep developing. And I truly believe that you will be free from this state of frustration. That felt so good and it was so helpful to me, and I am truly hoping and praying that it was helpful to you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Life Club with me, Tashima Jones. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you rocked out with me, and for that I am truly grateful. You can find me at tashimajones.com, all of my social media, contact information, and my app can be found there. Until next time, remember your greatness. Talk soon.
I am Tashima Jones, and you've been listening to Life Club. Thank you for tuning in.